Aloha and welcome to Hanukkah Co. We're a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. The guest I have today needs no introduction. He is definitely a public intellectual, somebody who is from academia but takes that knowledge of his and makes it very practical. Our guest today is Professor of Civil Engineering at the University of Hawaii, Panos Prevedouros, and you may know him as a two-time candidate for mayor in Honolulu, somebody who definitely knows his public policy. And I'd like you to sit back and relax and enjoy today's presentation, because I've asked Panos to join us here, not only to talk about a range of public policy issues, but to give us a primer on everything we should know about the fixed rail in Honolulu, but we're afraid to ask. And I'm going to ask some of the questions, but I'm going to make no assumptions. Many of our viewers are across the world. This might be the first time you're hearing about this. We'd like you to know about what's going on. And this is a one-stop shop today. I want to welcome to the program Panos Prevedouros.
Hi,
Panos,
aloha,
nice welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Let me just say this. Thank you for all you've done for Hawaii. Even if you have not won elective office, you've raised the issues to levels that people can learn about them and see. And so I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Well, and currently, what are you doing? You've got a pretty important position now in
Well, now I'm the chairman of the Department of Civil Engineering. We're pretty stuffed with students because there is a lot of emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So that area is going quite well, but it keeps us very busy because at the same time, UH is going through a round of budget problems.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the two don't go together. Too much work, too little funding.
You know, you're there trying to produce people who will focus on technology and entrepreneurship.
Right.
But let's hope the institution will do the same and really allow them the opportunities to affect Hawaii's economy.
I think we're lacking the flexibility, but maybe we'll try to improve.
Maybe we'll have a show on the UH and its administration and feature you. Well, you know, nobody can think about the experiences we've had with fixed rail without keeping in mind the voice that you have been over the last many, many years. And what I'd like to do is just kind of, for our audience, consider that there may be people who know very little, if anything, about this project in Hawaii and what it means for Hawaii, what it shows about Hawaii. But you got involved several years ago when this idea was just an idea. How did the idea of having fixed rail come to Hawaii? What problems were we trying to solve?
Well, the big problem, and it's a perennial one, is traffic congestion.
Yes, and you almost were late today because of Honolulu's unpredictable traffic congestion.
Although the schools are not in session, they are doing a couple of big paving jobs that they're late to tear down because of the rush hour.
That's
so
right.
Rush hour was extra rush today.
So what were we trying to do? Why did we consider fixed rail in the very first place?
Well, one of the reasons is lack of imagination. A second reason is, you know, somebody thought about it in the 70s and they kept repeating it in the 80s. Finally, it became like the rail for the resurrection of Frank Fassi. As you recall, Frank Fassi was a very accomplished mayor for Honolulu for almost 2 decades, on and off.
So
and one of his ideas was the rail.
So you're saying an old technology with political cachet for some people is the reason that we fixed on fixed rail?
Pretty much. And, you know, Fassi was quite reasonable in his rail. The furthest that you would go was Aloha Stadium.
Okay.
Even then, at $2 billion, that project was deemed to be very expensive. But nobody could stop moving.
$2 billion, that's changed today.
Well, he doubled the project. It says all the way to Kapolei, double it. Go make a very expensive train to visit, essentially to serve rural communities. Unheard of.
Now, let me ask you this, because Frank Fassi's legacy, really, however, is wrapped up in giving Honolulu a bus system, one that has won awards, one of the finest in the nation. So how do you put those two together? Is there anything antithetical between the philosophy of the bus and the philosophy of the fixed rail?
That's a correct word, and it's a Greek word too, antithetical. Because not only when and if we have the rail, the plan is to completely, and the word is cannibalize the bus, because now the bus is not going to have all the express routes, east-west. It's going to be a north-south kind of feeder service to the main line, which is going to be the rail. So the bus, as we know it, is going to shrink. And in this way, we also lose the familiarity that people have with the system. That's one. Second is, big chunks of the bus right now, 200 million are on the table, are going to pay for the overages of the rail. So
okay,
it's a lose-lose
that
for
brings
the
us
bus.
up to date, but stepping back into history a little bit, isn't one of the virtues of the bus system is that you can get on almost anywhere and go almost anywhere. You can go up hills, down hills, into backwoods. You can transfer lines and so forth. But the concept of the rail is very, very different. There's a fixed start, fixed end, limited
only 20
stations and so forth. And even the current model of it takes people from the airport to Ala Moana, where they can get a bus or taxi to their hotel.
That's right.
You know, that I could see tired visitors really wanting to do that. But so how do you fix, I mean, how did we get from the bus philosophy to the rail philosophy?
Again, the catalyst in their mind was congestion. Because the buses were suffering all the congestion that the rest of us are suffering. So they're thinking that, you know, this is not a good way to provide transit. Although the bus riders were not really, you know, particularly concerned with that. They just wanted a reliable, affordable transit system. All of a sudden now the bus is twice the fare, and the rail essentially is going to decimate the bus. So well, you know, not a good transit plan, really.
So you're talking about human behavior, for example, people on buses not being as concerned about congestion because they're sitting there with their iPod pads, they're sitting there on their phone, they're relaxing, they're sleeping and so forth. The concern for congestion is largely with the automobile driver.
Exactly. And you know, the bus was quite flexible. There are buses routed at 5 a.m. To take a lot of our workers from, say, Waipahu express to Waikiki. Excellent service. Those folks are going to lose that advantage. No, they have to wait in line for the train to come. And as you said, from Ala Moana, they have to transfer or walk to go to Waikiki.
That's right. Now,
terrible.
Now, you've taken us to Frank Fossey with the genesis of the project and so forth. Zoom ahead a little bit. When and where did we start promoting the current project that we have?
2006.
2006. What happened there?
Interesting what happened, because we had the mayoral race between Duke Bainum and Mufi Hanneman.
All right.
Duke Bainum was very upfront about it. He wanted transit. So several folks like me supported Mufi.
Okay.
And as soon as he got elected, he turned around and says, transit is the solution. You know, the mayor's job really politically is not to make roads. Mufi was, you know, larger than life in many respects. He wanted a big project. So he wanted to solve congestion. There is no way that a mayor would build a road. That's DOT Kuleana state. So as a city thing, says it's the buses. Well, Mayor Harris before had sort of failed with the BRT, the bus rapid transit. So he says, Mufi said, I'm not going to touch the BRT, although he could have fixed the weaknesses. He says, I'm going big. I'm going to do light rail as expensive as possible.
Now, when we talk about that, let's go to the side a little bit. Talk about another issue that I know is dear to your heart. You've been a friend to the Grassroots Institute, to causes promoting free markets and so forth. The whole concept of a big project, inevitably in Hawaii, means that we go after federal funding.
Sure.
That's where, that's very attractive to people. And so did the dream of going after large amounts of federal funding come to us through Mayor Hanneman at that time?
Actually, that's quite correct, although the congressional delegation always tries to do that. And because of the seniority of Senator Inouye, they said, this is a big opportunity we have now with essentially Democrat Congress at the time and Senator Inouye and Akaka at the time. Pretty much our state had the top seniority in the nation. We can write our own checks.
There you go.
And I was quite amazed, you know, Keli'i, because I thought at least they will fund us to the point of 50%. Most systems are funded to that level. We are the only ones getting less than 30%. Very surprising. But the cost of the project is so awesome. They said, hey, the biggest chunk we gave to New York ever was $1.5 billion. That's the best we can do for you. So unfortunately, that's the level that they decided to give us. They couldn't go any higher, but that's not good for us.
Well, that's the cost of paradise that so many people are willing to accept. The inflated prices of everything, including projects for federal
the cost
funding.
of paradise was that, you know, this project, if we were to be done, let's say in Los Angeles, which is expensive too, it would be around $3 billion. However, now, particularly the costs actually were finalized around the time that Peter Carlisle was mayor. And the final figure came down to 5.2 billion, if you were choosing to believe, because all these are advocacy figures. And then the Christmas gift came at the end of 2014, with only 5% of the project constructed. Magically, the cost now has ballooned to $6 billion, which is, of course, only the beginning. We are guessing that the project will double in cost, about $10 billion.
And you began to prognosticate, to give predictions as to what would happen in the opposition stage before we had committed to rail.
Right.
What at that time did you say would happen?
Well, I said a lot of things, but the simplest of them is San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Tren Urbano. We are an island, they are an island. We had a system supervised by the FTA. They built a system under the FTA, the federal.
Right.
Parsons Brinkerhoff was our lead consultant. Parsons Brinkerhoff was their lead consultant. Everything you look, they stack up. Elevated system theirs, elevated plan for us. All the dots plan. So what happened to them? Parsons Brinkerhoff said, your system is going to cost $1 billion and change. FTA said, that's good. They built it, $2 billion, 100% cost overrun. Parsons Brinkerhoff said, on opening day, you will have 80,000 riders. FTA says, that's a good number, we believe it. They built it. They got 25,000 riders. Now, this system has been in operation for over 7 years, and they have not reached even the half point of riders.
So
San Juan is predicting our fate. Right. Double the cost, less than half the ridership.
Well, you're Greek, so to use a Persian parable, that was the writing on the wall.
Yeah, that's right. It was the writing on the wall.
We want to scour the nation and the world for best practices. It looks like we looked for worst practice.
Yes.
And replicated that. But you've implicated in your story here the engineering contracting firm.
Yes.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about them, what we could have known back then.
Right. It doesn't have to be them specifically. Most of the planners in the nation, and there are papers in the academic world accusing them for essentially serving the client, which is a good thing.
Well, we're going to come back
to that
serving
break,
the client.
Okay, fine.
I mean, that's a
but serving the client is the city, not you and I, the taxpayer.
Absolutely. And we're going to have to come back to that point because the administration of this project is extremely important. I'm talking to Panos Prevedouros. He is probably one of the most experts on talking about what has gone wrong with the rail. And we're going to come back and hear some very interesting things, not only about the rail, but other public policy issues. Don't go away. We're a Hanukkah Co. We're here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We'll be right back.
Aloha, Yappers, and a Happy New Year. I'm your host, King Zilli. From inner city out to the platform and now on the Yap Show. It's a new year, and most would say a new beginning. So this is a call to action. As we promote tech, energy, diversification, and globalism, with ThinkTech Hawaii, the Yap Show is all about advocacy for effective leadership, comprehensive youth policies, programs, and access to knowledge and information for upward social mobility, especially for the historically underprivileged youth. This means we'll be looking at young people making a difference in their community. Youth policies here in Hawaii, the country, and the world. We want to highlight youth programs that are meeting young people where they are, working together to accomplish a goal or tackle an issue while providing information and access to free educational content for anybody looking to learn on their own time, study for an exam, or simply refresh their memory. We do this by inviting everyday people like yourself, state policymakers, youth advocacy groups, youth programs, professionals, and so forth. But most importantly, we'll be partnering up with my new organization, causeeffect.org. More information on Cause Effect, as this website is currently in development in hopes to feature courses, seminars, tutorials, and conducting surveys that will be featured on the show. As we leave behind 2014, I wish I could say we leave behind issues such as police brutality, youth violence, education, economic mobility, and so many other hot-button topics that made 2014 a difficult year. So what does it mean for the new year? What does it mean for youth policy? What does it mean for Hawaii as a whole? And most importantly, how does it affect you and your community? We want you to tune into the Yap Show at 3 p.m. Friday and find out. Aloha.
Welcome back to ThinkTech Hawaii's weekly program called Hanukkah Co, where we interview movers and shakers here in Hawaii. I want to put a plug in here for ThinkTech Hawaii. Our producer, Jay Fidel, is doing a great job. We're generating about 25 hours of original content here from downtown Honolulu, touching everything from local issues to global issues and showing how local is global and global is local. You can find our programs on www.thinktechhawaii.com. Now, back to today's presentation. I've got Professor Panos Prevedouros with us talking about the rail and other public policy issues. And before we ended the last segment, Panos, you indicated that there is a very important realization we need to come to when we see that the city was the client, not the people of Hawaii, being served by the producers, the contractors for the rail. Right. Well, what point were you trying to make?
Well, the point I'm making, and it's actually a point that has been made internationally by a very famous professor at Oxford University, Ben Fubia, is that the wrong person or entity is the client. You see, the person who pays the bills for all of these things is the taxpayer. But nobody reports to the taxpayer or asks for his or her opinion most of the time. Not only the city is the client, but actually the leading politicians. So yes, whoever essentially leads the city is the client. And when the client wants that a rail system, heavy rail, light rail, overground, underground, what is his or her best wish? The planner will try to make the models and the presentation be more appealing to
that. That makes all of the planning beholden to political considerations. That's right. Because the number one concern of political beings is to get reelected and to serve their special interests.
Indeed.
As opposed to a different scenario, which would put the needs of the public first. Now with respect to that, are there standards for public planning recognized across the world? Are there best practices that were not adhered to in the generation of this project?
There are general guidelines, but there are no rules. We are far behind, for example, Canada, UK, and Australia, that they have a permanent public auditor that looks at these reports and comes back 10, 20 years later and says, why did you say these things? Why did you go to the city on Edinburgh and said that this system will provide X, Y, Z, and none of them were achieved? Why did you make these claims? Why didn't you see peer projects and adjust your numbers? Who were you serving? You were not serving. We have none of this, and our rail project, like the H3 and everything else, has never been audited. Okay. The convention center has never been audited. Has it been good or bad? So along these lines, there is no accountability. So it doesn't matter if the consultant is PB or you and I. We can say things. If people believe them, and the decision makers put the stamps of them, it's a done deal. No accountability afterwards or during the process.
And the apparent clients, the political figures, come and go.
And that's exactly right.
People are left and holding the bill at the end of it as well, which is happening. Right. Now, before we go on to an update as to where we are with regard to fixed rail, just sum up for us, what is fundamentally wrong about this concept?
Fundamentally wrong is its inflexibility and the fact that it doesn't jibe with the mentality of a vibrant American city. One person has to look only at the national statistics, transportation statistics, and realize that rail systems serve 3% of the trips. I, for example, very much an advocate of bicycling, but you cannot solve it you cannot use it to solve transportation systems, because nationally bicycling is less than 1.5%.
Now you're taking...
So again, because of this, it's an understanding. People behave this way. 90 to 96% drive. Who am I, the governor, moving animal, to say that no, 15% of you will go there because we need to solve our congestion? It never works this way. So we will build it, they will not come. So we lose the money to build it, and we still have the congestion problem we started with from the 80s and the 90s. It's a lose-lose proposition, that's why.
Bring us up to date now. We've passed rail, we've had funding, and it's got off to a start, but it's been a very shaky start from the beginning.
First of all, we had multiple lawsuits. The Hawaiian EV-related lawsuit, which was a success, but it never was meant to stop the project. It was meant for the project to do the proper historical accounting of this and methods to protect the EV. That was a couple of years of delay.
And by the way, for our international viewers, EV is a very important concept in Hawaii. It's the bones of our ancestors. Hawaiians have buried their ancestors here in these lands, and those bones are considered sacred. In fact, you can pretty much dig deeply almost anywhere and find bones because we were a very warlike society, and they're strewn all about.
Yeah.
Very often, the discovery of these EV create real problems because there is state protection for them as sacred artifacts, and then we go to court often.
And then there was a second lawsuit that was built on grounds of environmental law.
Yes.
In my opinion, the lawsuit was very strong. There have been several mistakes. However, the judges took the avenue that for a significant portion of the complaints, our complaints were marginal. The judges did not go into any of the technicalities of the thing. To give you an example, at the beginning stages, the rail was competing with a freeway project. We insisted that they would build a 2-lane express freeway. However, the consultant built a freeway and they landed it into town to a traffic light. How can it possibly a freeway works if you just terminate it at a traffic light? It will be as bad as the traffic light allows it to be. So they designed a system as a competition, and it came only 2% inferior to rail, and then they said, oh, rail wins, the heck with the freeway, we're proceeding with the rail. So this type of manipulation is simply too obvious. The judges didn't work on that. They said, well, there's nothing in the book that says, you know, how to do a technical analysis of that. Show me the letter of the law. So the letter of the law didn't have it clearly, and they washed their hands and they moved on.
Now, you were involved in a suit. Is that right?
Yes, indirectly. I was not one of the plaintiffs.
You were a consultant.
Yes. So again, that's exactly what I was explaining. It had several rounds of it. Now, the city and HART, the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation, comes around and points the finger to us and says, you folks costed our city $190 million because of the delays. First of all, that's not only our lawsuit. There was the Keli'i Akina lawsuit we said about the EV that they won. Literally, the appellate court actually sided with them. Our case could have been expedited and be done in 6 months. However, Peter Carlisle at the time really put every impediment possible to make the case as expensive to us as possible so that we, the little people, can run out of money and delay. So all the delays actually were pretty much Peter Carlisle's doing, not our doing. We had filed. We were ready to go to court. All the delays were the city's delays. So they should be looking at them at the mirror and say that those 190 million were primarily their delays, nothing to do with us.
Actually, you refer to some citizens, and in many ways, these were heroic individuals.
All of them were citizen-driven.
Who, at their own cost,
that's right,
without any compensation, invested their own monies.
Bipartisan.
Tell us a little bit about some of them. I know Cliff Slater.
Some of them. Cliff Slater was the leader, as you know, the person who, from the 90s, opposed the Frank Fascist system.
Yes.
So he naturally took the lead.
Right. He was very dedicated
from
to
the
that.
left, so to speak, you had past Governor Cayetano,
yes,
who had
Ben
seen
Cayetano,
the truth.
That's right.
And from the right, you had Sam Slom,
and he even,
Senator Sam Slom.
Right, and Cayetano even re-entered political
life. That's right, in 2012.
Because of this issue.
That's right, when he saw twice that neither I or Ann Kobayashi won and were not successful, essentially, to stop the project, he stepped in 2012, although he was retired as two-term governor.
That's right.
To become the mayor and attempt to stop the project.
And you mentioned Sam Slom, and what this brings to mind here is that this opposition was not political. You have the leader of the Republicans, Sam Slom. You have Ben Cayetano, former Democrat mayor, I mean governor working together with nonpartisan
people like myself and
Panos.
Professor Randy Roth of
Randy
the law
Roth
school,
at the University of Hawaii.
Renowned, you know, and award-winning law professor.
So this was very much a grassroots movement
very much.
Of citizens.
Yeah, Dennis Cullen, a planner, very, very well known in town. Several of the architects. I mean, a lot of these people were hoodwinked. You know, the architects. The architects like transit systems. Moving Hanneman literally cheated them. When in the initial stages, they approach him and say, how can we contribute to the system? We want to make this a beautiful system for our beautiful city. They said, don't worry, your time will come to provide input. He said that in 2006. They went back in 2008, and he literally told them, oh, too late, the system has been designed and it's all set already.
Now, shortly after the launch of the rail, explain to us what happened that caused a rebidding for the project itself. And the bids that came in, I understand, shot the price up tremendously.
Right. Well, that pertains, if you step back for a minute, and not all the project has gone to bid. For example, there is a supposedly successful bid to do the technology.
All right.
That's our friends, the Italians. Ansaldo, one of the least reliable firms we could possibly choose. In fact, the mother of Ansaldo, Finmeccanica, is trying to sell it for over 3 years, unsuccessfully. Now they're close perhaps to sell it to Chinese. So Honolulu might get a Chinese train made in Italy and whatever.
You mean we don't do something called due diligence?
It's terrible.
And use Google?
I mean, we had very reliable contractors, and actually from nations that they are neighboring to us. Bombardier from Canada, and Sumitomo from Japan.
Yes.
You have to understand now, this is a system that is very custom made. It will have a lot of failures, a lot of need for repairs and all. Where do you want your parts to come from? Tokyo, a 7-hour flight, Vancouver, another 5, 6, 7-hour flight, or around the world from Italy. And of course, you're dealing with Italians, right? Nice people, but they take 1 month vacation in August. So if you have a major failure in August, you are on your own. You have to fabricate the piece locally. So that one is going to be a disaster all by itself. But $1.5 billion check was mailed to Italy. That was the federal contribution. You see, we have people like Senator Inoue, not with us anymore, but they made public statements that this job will make federal money come to Hawaii and provide jobs.
Local jobs.
He wrote a check for $1.55 billion. It came to Honolulu, and immediately we mailed it to Rome, Italy. The same amount, 1.5, no joke. So all the federal funds, immediately they were sent to Italy. Yes. All the rest of the system that you see being built here, except for everything that comes on ferries from Italy, is local funds. We and the tourists. And that's it.
Well, this is something people need to know about. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back for our closing segment. Again, you're listening to Professor Panos Prevedouros. We're talking about the rail. When we come back, we'll wrap that discussion up, and we'll take a look at another public policy issue, the Jones Act. We'll be right back after this short message.
Aloha, hello. My name is Hong Jiang, and I host ThinkTech Asia every Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. At our show, we talk about issues that are important in Asia, such as environment, culture, history, religion. We broadcast live, and we're also on Olalo 54. Make sure to tune in, and we'll see you there. Thank you. Goodbye.
Aloha, welcome back to our final segment today of Hanukkah Co on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute, and that's where we say Hanukkah Co, which means let's work together. Let's work together for a better government, economy, and society. And somebody who has been doing that long is Professor Panos Prevedouros at the University of Hawaii. Panos, as we wrap up our talk on the rail, what's happening to the price tag of the rail? We had a certain cost going in quoted to us, but it seems now daily that price is rising.
Yes, and I'm afraid that all the wrong things are happening to it because Hart is telling us things that they don't even make sense. As you alluded in the previous segment, bids have come in to construct the stations. The stations are fairly large. The size approximately of a football stadium, 20, 30 feet up in the ground, with escalators, elevators, very expensive part of infrastructure with a lot of needs for special foundation, etc. So they had bunched the stations in groups of 3 or 4, and they put them out to bid. The prices came in too high. 60 to 80% higher than
Right.
hard. How can you do that? I mean, they have engineers in-house. They know the cost. How is that possible? Okay. I don't know how to answer you this question, but Grabauskas,
Yes.
the director of HART, comes in front of the cameras and says, you know what, we have a smart solution now. We're going to beat them one at a time. But you and I know something that is called economies of scale.
That's right.
If I buy one at a time, it'll be very expensive. If I bundle it in threesomes or something else, if I build one for 300 million, perhaps the next one I can do for 280 million and the third one for 250 million. I can reduce the cost as I go along. But if you build station 1, station 2, station 3, other people, all of us are going to be upfront costs.
Imagine the wasted duplication.
I know. How can you possibly save money like that? But they show up on TV and they say that, and that is going to be our solution.
It's as if there is this idea that there's an unlimited source of money.
Yeah.
Are there other sources of money that we're going after, or are we going to end
Yes.
up having to put it on the taxpayer?
Oh, let me tell you. First of all, as we said in the beginning of the program, 200 million from the bus
Yes.
are readily guaranteed.
So we're going to
To be
divert that
yes.
money from
And
a system
yes.
that's working well for us.
And the second one, that again, Peter Carlisle did, he essentially opened up a checkbook of the sewer fund. Yes. So if the project has overruns, the city can begin stealing money, essentially,
You know,
robbing Peter to give it to Paul.
Haven't we learned from the recent dumping of sewage into the Alawai that we have to take care of that infrastructure? We can't just wait for a future government
It doesn't
to do
matter.
that?
We're operating, as we speak today, Honolulu is operating under a consent decree with the EPA. By 2030, we need to have 2 secondary treatment sewer plants and upgrade our lines.
And we are stealing that money.
That cost is $4.5 billion, and you have seen our
That's
sewer
right.
bills. From $30, they have gone to 110.
Now, what do you think about the shell game we played with the general excise tax, saying, you know, we're just going to raise it temporarily
That's
to
right.
fund the initial portion of the rail, and then we're going to reduce it again.
Well,
But-
as
but
they
that
say,
being played with.
and that's a frequent quote from Sam Slom, there is no more permanent than a temporary tax. So there you go. So eventually the city, whether it's this mayor or a future mayor, I mean, eventually the legislature will take pity at the city, amassing, you know, multi-billion-dollar debts that they cannot possibly repay until they give them 20 or 50 years of, you know, forever, essentially, GET tax. So who is the loser again? Bottom line, the taxpayer, big time.
Well, to switch subjects a little bit here, one of the unseen costs of the rail is the hidden tax on everything in Hawaii that is imported or shipped in here
Right.
because of a 100-year-old shipping law called
Merchant
the
Marine
Jones
Tax.
Act.
That's
right,
right.
1920. Panos, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have partial thoughts. It's very complicated, the impact of the Jones Act. One part that interests me particularly for Honolulu and as a transportation expert is our ability to have affordable energy.
Yes.
I need energy to run everything from the cars, the buses, the rail, everything, and of course our households and everything. Electricity is by far extremely expensive in Hawaii. Many times we complain that our gasoline is 40% more than mainland.
That's right.
Our electricity is 400% more than mainland average. People don't pay attention to that, but it is the truth. Now we have an elephant in the room, the rail, needing a lot of new energy. And we need to switch out of oil, right? There is a lot of pressure to get out
That's
of oil,
right.
out of coal, and do other things. What is other things? LNG, natural gas, methanol. But whatever we try to do, it's important. And here comes the bottleneck, Jones Act.
That's right.
We cannot find vessels, American built, American flagged, American ownership, American crewed.
And those are the 4
The
criteria
requirements
of the Jones
of
Act.
the Jones, but they're very heavy. So there is no LNG ship to come to Hawaii.
That's right. So while we are the world's greatest producers of LNG as a
That's right.
country, by law, for transport between American ports, we can only use ships that meet the Jones Act requirement, the
Right.
most notable of which is built in the United States. And we have no Jones Act qualified ship that can carry LNG.
That's right.
And so we have another scheme coming up. We put them into Matson containers, so to speak, and try to ship it in here.
Fix.
But that's a very unsustainable approach.
And another one is bringing it from Mexico or Canada, that they take us for a ride.
There you go.
They know our situation, right? So they are not going to sell it at the 7 cents or whatever they sell it to mainland prices.
Are you suggesting LNG as the long-term solution or as a bridge until we are able to have more sustainable energy sources up on our grid?
It's a substantial, you frame it correctly. It's mostly for the next 20 to 30 years because likely oil prices will be high and unpredictable.
Sure.
Right now, we're kind of swimming in a kind of euphoria of lower oil prices. That is not really sustainable. We cannot plan a future of 20, 30 years on cheap oil.
Right.
We need to switch to something more affordable, more predictable.
That's right. So why don't we just get from the federal government an exemption, a very narrow exemption, just to be able to bring LNG in on ships that are built by our allies and not under the Jones Act?
I mean, time and again, to me, that was a non-brainer to have the opportunity to elect Charles Dezou. I'm not changing the conversation into political here, but Charles clearly
we were talking about his position, not his personality.
Exactly. That was the only person that actually brought it up time and again, and that's exactly what we needed in Congress. Bring that issue to the front every time, so at least in the next 10 years, we have the opportunity for Congress to take us seriously to consider an exemption for Hawaii. Right now, it's just the two of us talking and a few of other people, but there is no action whatsoever. In fact, they're not talking about it at Congress for Hawaii. There's other markets that they're pressuring a little bit because the LNG has become a big deal for exporting. But Hawaii is at the losing end right now.
Well, although we are the state most impacted by the Jones Act because we're surrounded completely by water, we're not the only ones. We've got the non-contiguous territories, Puerto Rico, we've got Guam, we've also got the East and West Coast, and California, and Alaska, you're right. And so it seems as though our congressional delegation needs to make this known, but I don't think they're going to do that.
Exactly. It's not a priority for them at all. In fact, some of them, obviously like Senator Hirono and such, side for the Jones Act.
Well, if we could mobilize awareness amongst congressional delegations in the 49 other states and the territories, maybe we could get something that we're not getting from Hawaii.
It's a possibility.
How is Hawaii as a small business climate? I know that you have been an advocate for small business. You've been involved with a small business organization for many, many years. And we've seen the small business climate in Hawaii tend to decline even more.
Very difficult, very high cost, very high turnover. Some consolidation into medium-sized firms allows them to survive. But it's a small state. The counties are obviously apart from each other. So it's really very hard to maintain a multi-generational small business. So that turnover in small business has been very high, and it should be expected to be so in the future.
You and I travel quite a bit. I know that when I'm in Asia, people still talk about the demise of the Superferry.
True.
It's left a real sore spot here in terms of Hawaii as an investment climate.
That's right.
But wouldn't it enhance our state's economy if people could compete between the islands, drive their truck over, do contracting work, grow their vegetables, sell them on 2 different islands and so forth in an affordable way? So why don't we do that?
Well, we did, and we made a private firm did with some federal guarantees from MARAD, successful service. It had some issues, but of course all these were teething problems because Hawaii really didn't have a tradition of ferry service. I mean, for me as a Greek that comes from Greek islands,
yes, that's right,
coming to this state, an ocean state with no ferry system, this is one of the hugest oddities one faces being in Hawaii,
And how do you account for that oddity, as you put it? Because wherever you go in the world, where there are multiple islands, whether we're going into Canada or elsewhere, you expect to have ferry service.
Right.
You don't have to fly a plane to get somewhere. Why in Hawaii, and this is a broader question, do we not even think about that? Are we that isolated in our mentality?
Well, it takes a lot of money to do this,
sure.
right? So entrenched interests Unfortunately, they faced tremendous competition by this new entrant, and they made their level best to find politicos with fake, really, environmental problems to do their best to kill the project, and they succeeded.
You're suggesting that in order to fund the rail and draw attention to the rail, the Superferry was killed? You see that as a... Did I read you right there? I don't know if I did.
Well, it's the whole thing is, you know, deception and special deals, backroom dealing, and that's really what happens in a one-party state. There is no accountability, there is no transparency. So various decisions are made behind closed doors to support or not support the system. That happened to the Superferry, non-support. That's been happening for the rail, full support.
Well, you have certainly been someone who is not timid to speak out.
True.
In a state in which I think most people are rather timid to talk.
Perhaps.
Let me get a little bit personal here. Has that impacted your career or your daily life in any way, living in this state?
Mostly in positive ways, because people, including today at Long's, I was there with my son, and two people are stopping to thank me about, you know, bringing it up and discussing it. I really didn't have any negative other than the excessive consumption of time, which could have been spent more academically and publishing more books instead of, but I'm very satisfied because I think I'm doing something real for real people in a real community instead of abstract papers in journals.
Very good.
So,
well, I know there's another issue that's deep on your heart, and that is our economic conditions so that we fight the brain drain. You've got children, I've got children. My 3 older children are making their livelihood and their future away from Hawaii. You're a professor at the university. You want to see all your bright people leave Hawaii? What can we do about it?
Well, my own son finished in my own department, and he practices as a civil engineer in Tucson, Arizona. What can I tell you? Well, and you know what?
Yes.
I have an experience of 25 years as a professor. I go to a COLA adjustment calculator on the internet. My 20-year-old cost of living adjusted money, he makes more in Tucson than I make in Hawaii after 25 years.
Well, you
Hawaii
know,
is really a very difficult place to make it.
He might be your Social Security.
That's right.
Thank you for being with us today. It was
Mahalo.
very informative. My guest today, Panos Prevedouros, Professor of Civil Engineering and Chairman of the Department at the University of Hawaii, a true expert on the rail and other public policy issues. I hope you learned as much as I did today. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute. For ThinkTech Hawaii's Hanukkah Co, signing off. See you next week. Aloha.